So welcome to the AWS Developer Certification webinar. I'm going to talk about the AWS Developer Certification today, trying to tell you how it differs from the other certification and what you must do to get yourself certified in as an AWS Developer Associate, the first step in going up. And then I will also tell you what you should do beyond that. Once you finish that, what should you do? And I will be answering some frequently asked questions as well. So let us start by sharing my screen, and the PPT will be up now. And based on that, I will give you the idea of what is AWS Developer Certification, and so on. And once that is over, as usual, you can go ahead and ask me any questions that you want. Whatever questions you have, you can ask me. So let me share the screen here, and I am going to share the PPT. And here is the PPT of the webinar. Now, the first thing we want to know is what is AWS Developer Certification? What does it do? Basically, it answers a question, that is, can you develop a product using AWS services and using the SDK that is provided by AWS? This is quite different from your solution architect and the SysOps courses that you would have seen. And the services that you need to learn are going to be different here. What is it that you need as an AWS developer? Or more importantly, why is it that you want to develop on AWS? Now, AWS, as you know, is a cloud service. So you can develop what is called as born in the cloud solution, where you can take up multiple services of AWS and use all of them to build a solution. That we call as born in the cloud solution, where you're talking only about the cloud and all the services that the cloud provides. Why would you want to do that? You would want to do that because, as you know, the cloud provides better flexibility, it provides better availability, and it provides better scalability. So you can ensure your product is highly available. You can also ensure that your product is highly scalable. Now, that is one reason why you would want to use the AWS Developer Certification. What services must you know if you have to be a AWS developer? The first thing that you need to know is a simple queue service. Again, I'm just listing only some of the services. This is not all of the services. There's only certain services that I'm listing here. There are a few more services wherein you will be needed to understand them and code in them. One thing is, all these services that I'm showing you here are services which you can actually go ahead and code for. What language are you going to code in? Well, I'll come to that very soon. But look at some of these services just to give you an idea of what these services mean. There's simple queue service. This is a queuing service which allows two different services or modules of your program to communicate to each other in an asynchronous way. So if people have used RabbitMQ and other queue services, they would know easily what this means. So this queue is set up by Amazon. You can use the services of this queue to ensure that you make your applications loosely coupled. Then there is the simple notification service. This notification service is like a hub which will deliver notifications to you based on certain events, and you can register for this. So it is a publisher subscriber service. So SNS will publish to a particular topic, and whoever is subscribed to the topic would get the message. So that's another service that is given by Amazon, which you will use in your developer role. Then there is the very famous S3, which is a simple storage service. S3 has something known as events. Basically, S3 can inform you when an event happens. What sort of event can happen? A file or an object can be uploaded, an object can be deleted, and so on. When these happen, S3 can inform other services like Lambda or SQS or SNS and so on. And S3 is a very important service because that's the service which allows you to store your files. So S3 becomes an important component for you, both for storage, and S3 events become an important component for you to building your workflows. Then we have DynamoDB. Last week I spoke about DynamoDB. It is a NoSQL database, and DynamoDB streams, which is nothing but a stream of information that comes to you whenever there is a change in the database. Whenever a new item is added or item is deleted, you get to know that through DynamoDB streams. Again, DynamoDB is something which you would use a lot in programming if you want to use a NoSQL. Then you have the serverless service, the serverless programming, which is called as Lambda, and we also have Lambda Edge. Now, the Lambda service allows you to define functions which will be automatically run by AWS whenever a certain event happens. You don't need to worry about the underlying infrastructure on which your program runs. The program has to be given to the Lambda service. Lambda service will ensure that it runs the program and it bills you only for the time that the program ran. AWS also has something called step functions. These are things that you can actually build a workflow of how one function to other. Similarly, you have a simple workflow which can be used to building your workflow. Then there is API gateway. API gateway is something which you would use if you are developing APIs and you want to provide APIs to others. So using this API gateway, you don't need to worry about the infrastructure, the backend on which your API will reside. You just define the APIs. You define what should happen when an API is called. You can run a Lambda function in the backend, or you can send it to another proxy, and so on. And the API gateway will take care of all the necessary infrastructure. Then we have Kinesis for collecting streaming data. Kinesis has its own toolkit where using programming you can analyze the incoming data. And then we have Internet of Things. Internet of Things also, you need to program. There's toolkit available from AWS for this. So these are some of the things, some of the services that you would want to know as a developer, so that using these services, you can develop your product. Now, Amazon provides you with an SDK. This SDK is what is used by you to develop your applications. Of course, Amazon has everything as a REST API underneath. So everything is a REST API, but we don't go through the REST API. You use the SDK most of the times. So the SDK is available in Python. You have it in PHP. You have it in Java. You have it as .NET. You have it the .NET C#, Ruby, Go. So I put .NET. Sorry, that actually has to be Node.js. You have it in C++, and so on. And you also have the platforms for which you can build applications. You can build applications for your using the mobile SDK that Amazon gives. You can build applications for Android or iOS. And as I said earlier, for Internet of Things, there are SDKs available. Now, I'll come to some frequently asked questions as far as the developer certification is concerned. One thing that gets asked is, should I do an AWS architect course before doing a developer course? The honest thing is that it's not a necessity. That is, you don't really need to do an AWS architect course or solution architect associate course before you do the developer course. But it's good to understand some basic things, like what is EC2, what do you mean by EC2, what do you mean by RDS, like that. But you don't need to go very involved in trying to design a VPC, trying to understand routing tables and all that, trying to understand, NACL. That's not really a necessity for a developer. So developer is addressing a different thing. He is looking at the SDKs. He's talking about designing an application. So the architect is designing the infrastructure, whereas the developer is designing the application. So there are two different things. So infrastructure, how do you instantiate? How do you build the infrastructure? What sort of load balancers you need? What sort of auto scaling you need? What sort of VPC you need? What public subnet, private subnet? Do you need a Bastion host? Do you need a VPN connection? All these are things that an architect would look at. These are not of major concern to a developer. The developer assumes that the architect would take care of these infrastructure issues. So the developer is more interested in developing a program wherein he's trying to design, how do I decouple one module from the other? How do I make them loosely coupled? I don't want them to be tightly coupled, so that I can independently scale out each module. He's looking at such things. He's looking at design issues that may come up when he's coding. What are the dependencies, etc., how can I make this program asynchronous, and so on. So they are making decisions on whether they should have a synchronous callback or they could have an asynchronous callback, in the sense that we ask, do you want to use our own functions? Do you want to use the Lambda service, and so on. So these are two different things. The architect is looking at architecting the infrastructure. The developer is looking at developing a product. In the product development, there are different issues to be addressed, and The architect addresses different issues. There are, so the basic idea of what is AWS, what is EC2 and all is something which you may want to have. If you look at the CloudSiksha, we have a small free course also available called as a gentle introduction to AWS that will suffice for a developer. If he or she can understand that much, that should be fine, because they have to go and understand the other services much more. The question comes up as, who should take up the developer certification? The simple answer, of course, is that a developer. So a lot of people who are not into development or not comfortable coding sometimes ask me, should I do developer certification? I personally tell them there's nothing wrong in doing it. You can pass a developer certification without knowing anything about development. I mean, without knowing a language, because questions come only from the services. I'll talk about that in the later slides. But you can actually get certified as a developer without really knowing how to develop. Now, that is not going to help you in any way. So if you are not a developer, if you are not comfortable coding, then don't get here. Or the maximum you have done is just written some shell scripts for automation, but you have not done any serious coding, then this is not something for you. So you should look more towards a system operations type of a role, or a solution architect associate type of a role. This is for people who day in, day out are coding. Now, will they ask programming questions in the certification exam? The simple answer is no. The certification exam is programming neutral. Basically, they want to find out if you understand the services. I listed these services earlier. They want to find out if you understand these services thoroughly. Do you know why simple queue service is used? So they may give you a scenario and ask you, what would you use here? You want to use SQS, you want to use SWF, you want to use SNS? That is something which they would ask you. The questions will come from these services. They would ask you about Lambda. They would ask you about API gateway, or they would ask you about Kinesis. They would ask you about S3 events. Now, these are some things that you would want to go through and be thorough with, because you're not going to get a programming question like, can you write a program to store an object in S3 using Java? No, those sort of questions will not appear. What will appear are questions related to service. So they say, if my requirement is so much for an IOPS, so what should be the read capacity? What should the write capacity that I should ask from DynamoDB? Now you should understand DynamoDB. You should understand what is read capacity in DynamoDB, what is write capacity in DynamoDB, what is read capacity when you have things like eventual consistency, what is read capacity when it is strongly consistent, and so on. So the certification questions are going to come from normal services. You are not going to be asked any programming based questions. So you don't worry that, okay, I do this in Java, I don't know Ruby, will they ask in Ruby, or I'm doing this in PHP, but nowadays I heard Python is the main thing, will they ask from Python? Nothing of that sort will happen. You have to understand these services wherein programming is done on those services. So that is what is important for you, not the programming language. So be what you call, rest assured that don't get too concerned with the programming language part. Understand the services correctly. What can you do after the developer certification? So you have done the developer certification. Is that enough? You want to do more? What can you do? From the AWS front, you can take up the DevOps certification later. DevOps has different things going for it. It is they ask you about code deploy. They may ask you about code pipeline. They may ask you about code build, about the chef part of the infrastructure, how it is connected with AWS, and so on. That's a DevOps part where you're talking about continuous integration, continuous delivery, and so on. We're talking about infrastructure as a code, like in CloudFront and so on. That you can take up later. But more importantly, as a developer, a lot of things are moving toward microservices now. So I wouldn't know what is it that you are developing on, but if you are a developer, you may want to look at microservices. And Docker is something which is very, very important when it comes to microservices. So you may want to go ahead, look at what is Docker. You may want to look at Docker orchestrators like Kubernetes and find out how Dockers are placed, how they are connected to each other, how service delivery done, service discovery done, and so on. That's something you may want to have a look at. The next question that comes up, which many people ask, of course, is because they're putting in a lot of effort, is will I get a job once I pass a certification? Will I get promoted? Now, when you want to get a job or you want to get promoted, the first thing is that you must be a very good programmer. Because in real life, it's not enough if you know about the services. As I said, you may pass this exam without really programming much. If you understand all the services, it's possibility. There is a possibility that you can still go and crack the exam with very minimal programming skills. But that's not going to get you a job. First thing about a job is the interviewer is first going to ask you if you are a good programmer. They have to find out how good a programmer you are. So you need to be sure about your programming skills. Without good programming skills, it's not going to be easy getting a job, because people are not going to be impressed with the fact that you know about AWS services, but you can't really program in Java or program in Python or program in C++. If that's a requirement, that's a first requirement. Okay, so once you are a good programmer, then your chances of getting a job or a promotion are higher. Now, within the Indian context here, I would say that I see more opportunities if you are for developer certified people, because the number of people who are taking up developer certification is definitely not in the same range as in who are taking up the solution architect or SysOps. Recently, I went to give a certification exam on the beta certification of solution architect, just to find out how the questions were, what the pattern was, and so on. And then I looked into just speaking to the person there as to how many people come. The basic thing is that most people come for solution architect and SysOps. So number of people who are getting certified in developer seems to be slightly lesser. Again, this I'm going by anecdotal evidence. I do not have actual evidence of this. But my feeling is, if you are a developer and you know AWS development well, then the chances that you have in the job market are definitely higher. And if your company is into developing software applications based on AWS, your chances of doing well within your company are also higher. Then comes the question, So should I take any other steps that will help my career? Now, the AWS developers, the developers as such, are in a much better position than a solution architect or a sysops person, for the simple reason that it is very difficult for a sysops person or a solution architect to build something great, build something up, and then showcase that to people. Because if you are a solution architect, you want to build something on AWS on your own to showcase to somebody with whom you are seeking a job. There's only so much you can do within the free tier. Even if you do large things, now people are not going to be too impressed, because you may be talking to a company who are running 100, 200, 500 servers or running 10 VPCs. There's no way that you as a solution architect would design that on your own on all this and run that. That's not feasible. So what happens? In those cases, you can only demonstrate your skills in an interview. But in the case of a developer, you are lucky in the sense that you can think of a good project wherein you can code using AWS services. You can develop a project, at least a prototype, and then that can become your showcase. So you can say, look, this is what I developed. So maybe you just buy a domain name, buy a domain, host your application on AWS itself, and then showcase it. So if somebody asks, just point to your URL and say, this is my application. I've done this on my own. You want the code? It's available in Git. I have the code here. You can look at my code. You can look at my project. You can see what I've done. You can see that I've done this using the services of AWS. All of them within a free tier. You can still get to develop a fairly impressive project if you want. So if you do that, then it becomes very easy for you to showcase your skills, your proficiency. You can showcase this way, and you can also showcase your initiative. You say that, like, I take the initiative, I am proficient in this, and this is the project that I did. Have a look at that. You know, that is something which will be very impressive, and people are going to look at you seriously when they want to think of, or when they think of hiring someone, or if they think of putting someone in the project within your company, you will be a person who would be looked at favorably. So this is something that you can do. So you need to put in some effort, and if you do that, I'm sure this will help you a lot in your career. Now, from our side in CloudSiksha, we have done multiple AWS developer course. We also done the DevOps course. You can get in touch with us if you want to attend an AWS developer course. We run the courses both online as well as classroom. And you can mail us at enquiry@cloudsiksha.com to get more details on this, and when the courses happen, they happen at regular intervals. So this is something which I wanted to tell you as far as developer certification is concerned. So I will take a few questions. I'll stop the sharing, and I will take up a few questions. Let me have a look. And I will take up a few questions. Yeah, I can. Somebody's typing. Just waiting for this. Yeah, again, this question again is related to a job. Uh, how easy or how hard is it to find a job in AWS developer? This is not an easy question to answer in the sense that I'm not too sure what is the exact demand which is outside there for developers. But from my experience, I do know that a lot of companies have a requirement for it. I personally taught people in at least 4 or 5 MNCs where the batch size was about 25, 28 people. These MNCs are definitely looking towards people with development experience. They are by themselves training their freshers on this. So if you are someone who's looking seriously for a job, I think across the board there is a need. Whether it is a startup of course are quite a few. I again taught this to a few startups, the developer case, developer training. Startup onwards to big MNCs across the board, there is a need for developers who understand AWS. Of course, as I said, you must be a developer first. Okay, the next question is, what about freshers and students? So what if I'm a student or a fresher? Would I get a job? What are my prospects if I do developer certification? I would say compared to others like the solution architect or sysops, freshers have the best chance when it comes to AWS if they do the developer certification. Why? Because if you want to do a sysops or if you want to do solution architect, you must have a lot of experience in infrastructure. Now that's not easy to get until unless you are in a company working. But developing a product prototype is a much easier task. You can think of something good, you can understand things like what are queues and so on, and you can design a prototype, implement a prototype, and show that, as I said earlier, as something that you have done, and that will showcase your talent to the company. So even if you look towards getting an interview from some company, you can create a product, put up a link, and send it to one of the senior managers there saying, look, this is what I have done. I'm interested in working in your company. I have experience in Python, I have experience in PHP, or I have experience in Java, and I also know AWS. I'm certified and can give me a job. So in those cases, you will find that people are probably looking at you much more favorably. Because to get a job as a system operator without experience is very, very difficult. In those cases, either you have a fresher who's been taken into the company and trained, you'll have to get trained. They are not going to take you just because you have a solution architect or a sysops certification as a fresher. So the best chance for freshers who have programming experience and who are comfortable with programming is to look at the developer certification. Okay, so the next question that's come up is how easy or how hard is it to pass this exam. How good should be my programming skills? Again, I've already told you, this exam is not to test your programming skills. This exam is to test your knowledge of the various services. So if you know the services well and understand the basics, this is what I told in Solution Architect as well. Understand the basics. You will get various questions related to scenarios. If you understand the services well, you understand why you're doing design in a certain way. There are design documents, not exactly design document, there are design guidelines which Amazon gives. You should read them. You should find out what they say. How about scalability, or about availability, or about not having a tightly coupled system, why you should use a loosely coupled system, and all that. If you read those and understand the services, then it becomes very easy for you to pass this exam. It's not a very extremely difficult exam, but it's not easy if you do not understand the basics. So you should understand where you would want to use a DynamoDB, where you would want to store in S3, when you would want to use a Lambda, and so on, how you want to use Lambda. Understand these basics, and I'm sure this is an exam which you would pass if you have a good understanding of basics of all these services. Yeah, and another question now which has come up is there something like a senior developer certification, like you have a professional in a solution architect? Do you have some developer professional? Well, there's no developer professional. As I said, it has to now go to DevOps. You finish the developer, and then the next level that you go up is the DevOps certification. So you should aim for DevOps certification after you finish your developer certification. There is no professional level type of a thing in developer certification. Okay, so I think those were the questions that had come in. I see someone has just joined. If the person has any questions regarding this, you can please let me know, and I will be happy to answer you. Well, I think we are through with the questions. So we will close this webinar now. And as usual, if you have any more questions, please mail me, suresh@cloudsiksha.com, or you can send a mail to inquiry@cloudsiksha.com. I'll be more than happy to answer you. And as I said, we run different developer courses, classroom courses, online courses. You want to join any one of them, please feel free to send me a mail. I'll be happy to give you the details about them as well. So thank you once again for joining. So I will now close the webinar for today, and then we will meet up at the different webinar, most probably in the early week of the next month, that is the new year. So let me right now wish you guys a happy new year, because I'm not too sure if I'll be taking up a webinar before that. So wish you all a very happy new year, and hope to see you all being a part of CloudSiksha Academy. Thank you.